Okay, this lesson is part 4 of Biblical Hebrew, and we're still working on our perfect state, strong form of both the singular and plural inflected forms of the strong verb. In first lesson, we wrote across the top the titles of our stems. We indicated singular or plural. We indicated whether it was feminine, masculine, third, first, second, or we indicated if it were common. So we learned that. You just practice that, write that down. We noticed cal, pl, and pual were exactly the same prior to punctuation. We noticed the n in nifal was the indicator of a noon was called for as the sign of the simple passive. So simple active, simple passive, intensive active, passive reflexive, which is the odd one of all the 7. And then we have causal, active, and passive. So before we go any further though, however, it's necessary to notice tet, numeric value 9. This is from the Sephardic pronunciation, and this is the block form that I was using, especially when I teach it to children. It's easier for them to just learn the lines of a square. Like tet, for example, when you draw it, it's just simply with a box with the top closing in, if you will. So you notice tet, however, is usually, and I never say never in Hebrew, but it's part of the root of a word, where tav, let me show you, tav is more often, it can be part of a suffix, and when we get to the imperfect state, you'll notice it's also part of a prefix, so that will help. And also, good news about punctuation. Sometimes the Masoretic vowel system, people can almost become overwhelmed. But let's just look at our board for a moment and notice in the intensives now, but for punctuation, it looks exactly like the cal active, simple active. And but for the noon, we would have no idea how to distinguish active from passive, but now we see that. So that's good news. That's good for us. We notice there's no prefixes in the intensive, active, and passive. So hithpael with the sign hith being prefixed, that should be a clue. So we want it to script us, prompt us, and let it guide us as we look at it. But notice the middle radical, the tet here, and then notice the tav at the ends that were used. And each of them, first let's look at the doubled middle radical. This is called a doggish forte, which is a strong doggish. The weak doggish was used for sound to distinguish between the soft and hard sounds of the letter tav, for example. Do we say T or do we say TH, as in hith here? So where it's absent, it's the soft TH. Where it's present, it's the hard T. So that's good news. But remember, we knew that before we punctuated it because we had memorized our endings by going ta, ti, ti, tim, tin, nu, and we hadn't even inserted the vowels. I was just using the sounds ta, ti, ti, tim, tin, nu. And then we noticed, though, that the good news about this doggish forte, the strong doggish, it actually doubles this tet here. So it now allows us to view this consonant tet, this T, as double. But notice how good that is for us to notice when it's an intensive form, it will have a doubled middle radical. So that should relieve us rather than distress us. And we can then begin to go in and ask ourselves, how do we do this? So we have ka-tal, ka-ti-la. Remember, it's ta. Now we have ka-tal-ta. Now this shiva, it determines whether it's a vowel sound or is it a syllable divider, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So we have ka-tal, a-ta-ti, that's a half sound. Ka-tal-ti, so ka-tal, ka-ta-la, ka-tal-ta, ka-tal-ti, ka-tal-ta. no, katal te, katal ti, ata te ti, katala, katal ta, katal ti, katal ti. So see, the chart even corrects me, it scripts me, it formats me. So now we have ka tilu, yeah, ka tilu, and then we have ka tal, and this tim here, it's with this very soft sound here, and we'll cover that in just a moment. Ka tal tim, ka tal tin, just like a tin cup, and then ka, wait a minute, ka tal new. There we go. Again, if you walk through it, even I'm using it, going through it, I have to stop because there's accent marks we'll put there. We have Nick Tal, Nick Tal, Nick, wait a minute, Nick Tila, Nick Tila. We have Nick Tal Ata, Ata Ti, let's go ahead and write that, Ata, Ata Ti Ti. So we have Nick Tal Ti, Nick, let me put that there, yeah, Nick Tal Ti, and of course I need to make sure I'm not leaving out that accent. So yes, we'll get to that in just a minute. So here we have Nick, let me see, Nick Tilu, I think that's a double shabbat there. Yes, yes, you will remember this sometimes even when you don't know why. So there we go, Nick Tal Ta. No, this is Tim. Remember now we're in the plural. Tim, Tin, and then new. So Nick Tal Tim, Nick Tal Tin, and then Nick Tal new. Okay, now we can check ourselves. Remember, these things will be prompts for you. Remember when you write your chart, and write it on a board is something I haven't done on a board like this. My board's a lot smaller. I'll write it on a board. We usually take one stem at a time. It's when people have questions. It's when I would gladly teach it. We had more than one person who wanted to learn it. I would even meet during the week. We had people come to the building, and I would try to show them what they can know, so that, as our professor taught us in the seminary, don't let what you don't know throw you from what you do know. And I've expanded that and realized that I don't let it throw me from what I can know. What can I know? I can know this. That's not Hebrew. I can know this. Those are just new vocabulary words that identify and categorize the stems. I can use colors to identify simple, intensive, and causal. I can learn that this is simple, active, simple, passive, intensive, active, intensive, passive, intensive, reflexive, and then causal, active, causal, passive. Again, those aren't Hebrew words. I can learn these three letters of the root word, katal, and notice that in this kal, third feminine singular form, that is the actual pronunciation of those three letters. So I have that. I can know this, that it's the same in all of these. I can notice in the Cal, PL, and Pual that they look exactly alike. That is, they're in the exact same form prior to punctuation. I can notice Nifal, the letter N in Nifal, calls for the letter Nun in Hebrew to be prefixed to the simple passive. I can move over to Hithpael and notice that the Hith, the Hey, Tav, and the Tav is soft, so it's a TH. I can then write that prefix there, knowing that now that's good news. That gives me a prompt, an indicator, and a clue, if we will, to the fact that it's intensive and reflexive. The endings are still the same, so that enforces it. I come over to causal, active, and passive. I notice both of them are indicated by the letter hey at the beginning, so I can write those. But now I notice that both of these stems prior to punctuation, along with PL and PUAL and CAL and NIFAL, look exactly, well, CAL, PL, PUAL, and HIFIL and HOFAL prior to pronunciation. You notice the endings are all the same. And the hey is good news because now all I have to do is notice what distinguishes it from active and passive. Hey is a clue indicator that it's causal, and now there's internal punctuation that will help me know and demarcate active from passive. When I come to intensive, I can notice the double middle radical, which is that dot. It's a doggish forte, a strong doggish that doubles the radical. It doubles that letter tet, and that gives me grammatical implications. So this tells me it's intensive. This tells me it's intensive. So I have two clues now. I know these are all the same. That gives me, is it a first common? Is it a third feminine? Is it a second masculine? Things like that. That tells me that. So this I can iterate, reiterate, practice it deliberately. These I can learn by remembering the name. Hith tells me to look for this. Hifil and Hafal both tell me to begin with hey. The letter H in English will be my hey in Hebrew. So now we can step back and say, oh my, I could have noticed this with the noon and the ending without the internal punctuation at this time. Yes, in the strong form we can. And we can see the double middle radical, which would give us a definite clue when it comes to these two stems because the hith gives this away. But you'll also have that. So the double middle radical is very important. And that's called a doggish forte, which is just a strong doggish. The doggish laney, which is a soft doggish, has to do with pronunciation. It's not really grammatical. It's the difference between a hard tav and a soft tav. So we'll stop there. This is number 4. I'll complete this initial series on how to build this strong chart with video number 5, and we won't go any further because 5 videos will be enough to build this. Now use this same approach for the imperfect, and I'll eventually build that one, and I'll limit it to 5 videos as well and deliberately break that apart. But notice how we built this in 4 steps so far, and it's been, laborious and tedious. And if you haven't yet learned your alphabet and you say, well, I've learned these 3, well, certainly if you'll rewrite those enough times to fill out this board, because what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's 9 times 7. Oh my, that's 56, isn't it? 9 times 7. Let me see. No, that's 63. That's 63 times you will have written those 3 letters, that root word, just in this chart. So you'll have that down rather easily. And each time you write this, so this gives you a chance to build your chart, and then as the pieces fall together. Now, go back and iterate and practice your alphabet, and then we'll continue to work on our punctuation. So you have a blessed day.